Purdue goes down to Indiana 72-67. This is now the third straight loss for this Purdue team. Kind of turning in from back-to-back losses, kind of a little blip in the road to now we're on an actual losing streak. And if things don't turn around quick, this team could find themselves in trouble. And they're already losing ground in the Big Ten race. The Big Ten regular season championship is looking less and less likely by the minute. So a lot to figure out for this Purdue team, but I feel like there were a few positives, especially there at the very end of that game, at the IU game, to take away. Never fun to lose to your rival, but what did you kind of take away from this game, Ethan?
So for the last two recaps I've gotten on here and really slammed this team for a lot of stuff that I felt was poor coaching decisions, bad schematic stuff, and stuff I wasn't really sure this team would be able to fix. This game is kind of the opposite. The worst loss of the bunch by far, but also one where nothing was happening in this game where I was like, oh, Purdue's just not athletic enough to hang, or oh, Purdue just doesn't have the X or the Y or the Z. This was all effort and want. And it was a tale of two different games. For the first 30 minutes of this game, Purdue didn't want it as much as IU did, which is crazy for a team coming off two straight losses heading into a rivalry game on the road to come out here and say like they just didn't want it bad enough, they didn't play hard enough. And then for the last 10 minutes, they did. They looked like the much better team. They clawed their way back into the game. For their part, Indiana did everything they could to give this game away. We can talk about that here in a minute. And Purdue couldn't take it because of the hole they dug themselves into in the first half and even the first 10 or 12 minutes of the second half. So, I mean, Painter came on in his post game and had a little more spice than you usually see Matt Painter have, and said he needed to find guys who wanted to play for 40 minutes, which I think is a pretty telling message in terms of what he's looking for from his guys in this next 2 game stretch.
Yeah, I mean it. I mean, I think it was pretty apparent, and that's why you saw Painter so animated in the press conference. There was an effort problem. I mean, they just didn't play hard enough or focused enough, and I thought, I mentioned it at the beginning of the video. I thought the last like 5 to 10 minutes there were some actual positives to take away, and we can get into that a little bit. But there was nothing schematic about this loss at all. It was this team didn't play hard enough for the entire game, and you couple that with an a okay shooting night. I mean, this wasn't a great shooting night, but it wasn't a bad shooting night. And I mean, if this team shoots 50% from three, sure, they probably win this game, but they didn't. They shot 35%, and this team just didn't play hard enough to overcome not shooting the lights out.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the numbers here. Indiana shot 36% from three. Now, they were much higher shot volume from three, which we discussed in the opening or in the preview. But they only shot 74% from the line. Now, Purdue shot 53% from the line, thanks to a 5 for 10 showing from Trey Kaufman-Renn, though both Daniel Jacobson and Oscar Clough also missed free throws. Indiana missed 3 consecutive 1-and-1 front ends in the final like 4 minutes of this game that really kept Purdue in it. Their offense kind of ground to a halt. They were struggling to get consistent buckets as they're trying to claw their way back in, and Indiana couldn't make them pay on the other end, and Purdue kind of hung around late. It's really hard to point to anything Indiana did in this game and say like, well, Purdue just didn't have an answer for that. Even a lot of the defensive breakdowns were super easy to spot. Even on the TV broadcast, you could see them coming from a mile away. And Indiana had their own share of defensive breakdowns where Trey Kaufman, how many times was he just alone under the basket with no one around him, and clear defensive miscommunication? And when two teams are playing as sloppy as that, the team that plays harder usually wins the game.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing Purdue didn't really have an answer for was Nick Dorn. He got going a little bit, made a few shots, but other than that, it was like going under on a Lamar Wilkerson dribble handoff. In what world should you be doing that on that guy? That doesn't feel like a schematic issue. That feels like a execution issue, and I think that this game was marred by that. I mean, Indiana really, I don't think, didn't play all that great. This wasn't like a, oh my god, DeVries just ran great action, and Wilkerson went off, and Tucker had a great game, and Dorn had a great game, and the bigs were productive and did good things, and it kind of felt like an average Indiana game, and they just played harder, and Purdue ended up out rebounding this Indiana team, but only by 5. I mean, Painter alluded to it in the press conference after. Like, Purdue out rebounded Indiana by 5, but it should have been 15. And I think that's true. And I don't think it was really a schematic issue tonight.
Yeah, we said in the past that Clough getting switched on the perimeter takes away our biggest rebounding presence down low and things like that. But a lot of these were just effort based. I mean, Clough was the leading rebounder for this team with 6, or I guess he was tied with Jack Benter with 6, who put in a pretty solid game. Can talk about him here in a minute. I didn't, like I said, I didn't think Indiana did anything super crazy. They just have a couple of really good players who do a couple of things really, really well, and Purdue wasn't prepared to stop those things. Lamar Wilkerson, 19 points. Did take him 18 shots to get there. He only went 2 of 9 for 3. I was happy to see that CJ Cox kind of stuck to him like glue in this game. Forced him some tougher shots throughout it. It was a little bit more like the CJ Cox we'd been accustomed to seeing in the non-con portion of the schedule. And you and I even said in the preview that this was probably a good matchup for that because Indiana doesn't have like a ton of varied weapons. Purdue could really hone in on a couple of guys, and we circled 3 guys that needed to focus defense: Wilkerson, Nick Dorn, and Tucker DeVries, and those were the 3 guys who beat Purdue. Tucker DeVries only had 9 points, only took 7 shots. He wasn't super involved offensively, but he had 10 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 steals, and a block. He was everywhere in this game. And then maybe the hero, the unsung hero for Indiana, a guy I was really, really impressed with, Connor Enright. Had an up and down season for Indiana. I don't think he's really lived up to what they were hoping they would get, is sort of like a do everything point guard to lead their offense. Only had 8 points, 2 of 5 from 3, but both of those threes were back-breaking. Purdue was doing the sag off of, bad shooters' defensive strategy, and Enright's absolutely a guy you want to do that to versus letting him drive into the paint. And he made Purdue pay. His 3 in the deep wing late in the game sealed it for Indiana. And when he did get into the paint, he dished out 8 assists. So credit to Indiana. They came in with a pretty focused plan on both ends of the court and managed to drag the game down to where they wanted it played.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely, like, I thought this was definitely a good Tucker game. He did, I think, a lot of the dirty work and was really kind of the main driver of why Indiana kind of out-toughed Purdue underneath. Like, I don't think I think without Tucker DeVries, this Indiana team does get beat by 15 on the boards, even with the difference in effort. And this was, I think Tucker led the charge in that department. I mean, you see it with the 10 defensive rebounds. He really helped keep Purdue's bigs off the offensive glass. I think is part of why Clough wasn't super productive and ended up getting benched later on in the game. But the guy he got benched for, I think, is who I wanted to start this with, because this just feels like another very significant data point into anybody who has stock in Jack Benner. He kind of got a lot of run down the stretch, and I thought, kind of when he got his chance at the end of the game there, and Purdue went small, and he played the 4 quite a bit. He answered every question, every test, even really the only thing you can say he didn't do well was he missed that wing 3 that was pretty early in the shot clock. But I'm going to be honest, I don't even hate that shot. It was a pretty good look. He's a good shooter. He had already made one in this game. And quite frankly, I was tired of watching guys pass up good looks anyway at this point in the game. And it was a relief to kind of see somebody shoot a good look off of a Braden pass finally. I was really, really impressed with Benner. I feel like that's the main positive to take away from this game, and I think I want to start there.
Yeah, Benter played 18 minutes, 5 points, just took 3 shots. He knows his role in this team. He had 6 rebounds. He's a guy who is going to get more and more run, almost independent of what he does. Now, obviously, he has to play well enough for this to be an option for the team. But a little bit like Cam Heide last year. He's going to get a bigger and bigger role just because some of the other bigs on this team just aren't playing the way they need to be playing, and he gives Purdue a different look. Um, you think back to last year, Cam Heide was coming off a pretty sensational freshman year, and when he played limited minutes, and the expectation was that he'd take a big step forward as one of Purdue's best players. That obviously didn't happen, but he still ended up playing almost 30 minutes a game because Purdue really only had two other players they liked in the front court in Caleb First and Trey Kaufman-Renn. And I think we're heading down a similar path to Jack Benter. Now, Benter wasn't asked to do as much as Heide was to start the year, and he continues to pass every test with the flying colors. So this isn't to compare the arcs of the two, but the role on this team I think is very similar in that he's a plus rebounder at the four. He's a great shooter, at least on somewhat low volume, and he spaces the floor, gives Purdue a different look than they do when they have Trakoff and Red at the four. And if he's doing those things well enough, if he's shooting the ball and he's rebounding, it lets you play only one center, which has been a major issue on Purdue's defense, is having centers on the court. Adding Jack Bender to the mix gives Purdue a different look and a much more versatile defensive one.
Yeah, I mean, I think visibly the defense was just much more active. They're flying around a lot more with Benter on the court. It kind of felt like the lineup at the end was the lineup that Paint figured out was that was the lineup that was working. That was the only thing that was working. And I don't think that it's a shock to me that it had the three guys in it that I think played the hardest against IU. I think Braden, CJ, and Jack Benner were the three guys that really showed up and did bring the intensity and the effort necessary to win that game. And I think it showed when they were on the floor. I mean, those three probably played in every single lineup that was productive for Purdue last night or 2 nights ago. And I think Jack Benner, that's just kind of seems to be a trend when he's on the floor. Is the team looks better, the team looks more connected. Whether he's on the floor for Trey Kaufman-Renn or for Oscar Clough or for Fletcher Lawyer, he just he ties everything together so well. He plays his role correctly. He plays hard. He's one of the best effort guys on the team. I think the body language never changes. The effort never changes, even when he misses a shot. Just wholly impressed with Jack Benner, and I think that, like as you said, he's in that Cam Heide role, but he has kind of taken charge in that role a lot better than Heide did. It felt like Heide kind of fell back into that role to hide into it, and this feels like Jack Benner taking as much as he can out of this role and saying, "I need more."
I still question what Jack Benter looks like when you're asking him to play 30 minutes, one of the featured options on the wing on this team. I'm very impressed with what he's done so far, don't get me wrong, but the chatter among Purdue circles seems to have been like, oh, this is who Cam Heide was supposed to be. And it's like, right now, he's just Cam Heide. Like, right now, like, that's actually one of his most similar player comps on Cam Bomb. Statistically, he is Cam Heide in that lower usage role. The issue with Heide was we needed him to play a larger role, and he couldn't do that. I think the jury's still out on whether Benter can, but there's no reason to think he can't. He's passed every test with flying colors. I would just caution Purdue fans who are getting maybe a little overexcited comparing the two. When Heide was in the role that Benter is playing, he was doing exactly what Jack Benter is doing. The reason that we sort of have a more negative view on him, the reason he left the program is because he both wanted more and couldn't handle more responsibility when he needed to. But just on this team, I mean, 18 minutes in this game, it feels like he's going to continue to get more and more minutes, especially as Daniel Jacobson's minutes continue to decline. The main reason, in fact, that Benter is getting more minutes is because they're playing Jacobson fewer minutes. I mean, Oscar Clough only played 19 minutes in this game, and this was a bad Oscar Clough game, but he's played 19 minutes before. Usually those minutes are taken by Jacobson. Against Indiana, they were taken by Benter because Jacobson had maybe the most deceptive stat line you'll ever see. 3 points, 5 rebounds, an assist, a steal, and 2 blocks. Sounds like an awesome game off the bench, but he was practically unplayable in his 13 minutes, which should probably honestly make Purdue fans excited for what he can be and just how productive and all-around amazing Jacobson could be if he could figure a few things out. But against a pretty favorable matchup against a smaller Indiana front court that didn't have or wasn't supposed to have the physicality to really make him uncomfortable, he looked very uncomfortable offensively in this game.
Yeah, there were a couple of Reed Bailey versus Daniel Jacobson plays where I was just like, you know what? those two guys are probably very comfortable going against each other. This is this is the perfect matchup for both of them. You got Reed Bailey pushing Daniel Jacobson off the block on one end, and then Reed Bailey just kind of going up weakly into Jacobson's chest and throwing a layup attempt off of Jacobson's elbow on the other end. And you knew those two guys were comfortable, but I think this was just a horrendous Jacobson offensive game, and it almost didn't even feel like it was his fault. It felt like it was Purdue's fault because of what they were asking him to do. I mean, he's not a guy that should be posting up most possessions 4 feet from the rim and trying to bury a guy and receive a pass and make a post move, because he's just not that physical player. He's not able to bury guys yet. And it turned him into this unplayable player because you're trying to force feed a guy on the block who's not capable of playing with the ball on the block. And I thought he wasn't awful defensively. He had some good moments. I thought he moved his feet well. I make the jokes about Reed Bailey, but he was at least able to stay in front of a fairly mobile front court player like Bailey. I don't think that he struggled too much defensively. It was just offensively. I mean, he didn't really catch the ball that well when he did have position. Uh, he didn't rebound great either. He had a few rebounds like in the stat line, but it just felt like he was getting out physical and out muscled, and it to combine that with a team that feels like they're getting out hustled just doesn't work for your center spot.
It doesn't, and he was only credited with one turnover. When you were watching the game, it felt like he had more than just the one turnover. So maybe like a couple of Braden's turnovers, maybe should have been credited to Jacobson. But yeah, I mean, he is just not a physical presence on the block, and they're trying to basically play him like Oscar Clough when he's out there. Like, oh, he's got post position and get him the ball. That's really not who he is. I mean, we've talked about who his comp in a Purdue uniform is. It's Matt Harms. Like that's who he is right now. Is like a young Matt Harms, and he has the potential to be an even better player than Harms ended up being for Purdue. But right now, he's Matt Harms, and you weren't looking to feed Matt Harms post touches. He was a lob threat. He could get putbacks, but you weren't running down the court and being like, all right, Matt Harms got good positioning, throw him the ball, because he might not catch it. And that's kind of where Jacobson is right now. And there was a stretch in this game where Purdue's offense, and they couldn't buy a shot. There were lots of turnovers. Guys were missing bunnies. And Jacobson had like 6 inches on the guy he was guarding him. So they're like, all right, just get it to Jacobson. He'll figure out something to do with it. And he did one time. And the rest of the time, it resulted in a turnover or a bad shot from someone else, or it just they were really trying to. I almost feel bad for the guy. He's just not ready for that role, and he's got some more physical development to go through, I think, before he's ready for Big Ten play like that.
I agree. I think that's the one gripe I think I had schematics wise with the coaching staff, is it just felt like it was an odd choice to try and force feed Jacobson in those minutes. Otherwise, I don't think they did anything wrong. I think this was a mostly an execution thing, as I said. But that was kind of the one bizarre decision to me, was like this adamantly demanding to get Jacobson the ball on the block. It's not his game yet, and maybe it will be. Who knows? He has great touch. If he puts on another 20 pounds, who knows? He may be a physical force on the block, but he's not that yet. And even Oscar Clough wasn't. Like, he was missing layups in this game, and it just felt like an odd decision to try and keep forcing that when I think you had some things going. Like Trey Kaufman-Renn, for as much as we talked about the rebounding issues, had it going in this game offensively. Like, this was the best TKR offensive game we've seen all year. This was last year Trey Kaufman-Renn. It gave you 23 points, 9 for 14 from 2-point range. Got to the line 10 times. I mean, he only went 5 for 10, but that's a minor gripe for a guy who had 23 and took 14 shots from the field. He had the one weird push shot from like 20 feet out on the wing with Enright guarding him. I don't have an answer for what that was, but other than that, I thought this was an excellent Trey Kaufman-Renn game. I mean, he didn't rebound the greatest, but I think like this was kind of what you needed from TKR. You got let down by other spots.
To quote the great Robbie Hummel, the backboards are hurting after after Trey pushed a shot from 20 feet through the side of the backboard on the other side of the rim, and then Enright came right down and airballed the three so badly it did the exact same thing, and they were guarding each other in both cases. So I guess
Did you
Enright
notice
got him.
that did TKR guard Enright the entire game? Because I
There were
noticed it quite
long
a
there were
bit.
long stretches where he was. It reminded me a lot. We talked about this a little bit in the preview too, of like the
The Ty Rogers.
defending, yeah, the Ty Rogers approach. Famously, when Illinois played Purdue back in Edie's senior year, they stuck Zach Edie on Ty Rogers and completely shut down the Illinois offense because Rogers is not a shooter, and it left Edie to patrol the paint, and you weren't worried about Ty Rogers taking mid-range jump shots. And they tried to employ something similar here with Enright. Now, again, credit to Enright, he made him pay. I mean, he had the game ceiling three because they were guarding him like this. But he's a sub 30% three-point shooter with an awkward shot. You're okay with him taking those looks, and if Purdue's offense executes the way you expect it to, that's probably not an issue. But um, yeah, I mean, this is something I kind of meant to talk about at the top of the game or top of the recap. This felt like last year's Purdue team, didn't it? Like, watch
It
this
did.
game is like this is what Purdue was last year, right? Trey Kaufman-Red had 23 points on 9 of 14 shooting. Braden Smith had 14 points on 14 shots. Fletcher Lawyer and CJ Cox each had 8, and really no one else made a big impact in the scoring column. We talked about Jack Bencher's rebounding. He only had 5 points, only took 3 shots. I mean, Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer, and Trey Kaufman-Wren took 34 of Purdue's 54 shots. And that doesn't even include their free throw usage because they took a combined, I guess, just 10 from Trey. But that's 5 more possessions, 5 more shots for the team or for those 3 guys in Trey's free throws. I mean, this was Purdue last year, and it circles back to Oscar Clough. When Oscar Clough is gonna have 2 points, 6 rebounds, and assists in 19 minutes, a extremely Caleb Furstian stat line. This is last year's team. I mean, it's exactly last year's
It's
team.
it's arguably worse than last year's team because when Clough is spitting out this production, like I think for everything we knock first, like he was the opposite of a guy who was like always productive. I think first positives didn't really show up in the box score. I, when Clough's doing this is a downgrade from Caleb First because he's a significantly worse defender than I think First was. Like at the very least, you felt okay about First moving his feet on the perimeter with guards. Like you could employ a switching strategy because you had Caleb First at the 5 and he could do that. That was the one thing that Caleb First did well, I thought last year was he was able to kind of use what he did well defensively in Purdue strategy to find a role. And like Clough doesn't have that. Like there is nothing that Clough really does defensively that benefits, I think, his high level at all. Or really, everything he does defensively is exploitable by the other team, and I fear that it's going to continue to be exploited by good teams.
Yeah, I mean, this stretch right now reminds me a lot of a similar stretch Purdue went through last season in Big Ten play. Starting February 11th last year, when they went to Michigan and had a very tough, close loss where Braden Smith missed a potential game-winning 3. Purdue lost 4 straight in conference play. They got kind of knocked around by Wisconsin the next game at home, lost pretty convincingly at Michigan State, and then had the complete second half no-show in the rivalry game at Assembly Hall to close out that stretch before they had a get-right game against UCLA. This is a very similar stretch for Purdue. And I think what fueled that run was Purdue realizing they weren't as good as they thought they were. To that point, Purdue going into the Michigan game, Purdue had won, quick math here, they had won 11 of their last 12 going into that game. They did have the famous Jake Diebler Ohio State home loss. But other than that, they hadn't lost since the Auburn game right before Christmas. And they were not just in contention, they were in the driver's seat for the Big Ten with everything in front of them, with games against Michigan and Michigan State still ahead of them. And you could kind of tell as they started losing those games, they kind of realized we're not as good as we maybe thought we were with all these wins that we racked up. And they already gotten knocked around quite a bit in the non-con and by Penn State earlier. So it wasn't like they were new to losing, but winning the Big Ten was still in front of them, and they had every chance to do that, and weren't able to do it. And this feels very similar, mentality wise, mindset wise. Now, Purdue's 17-4. Like, if the season ended today, they'd probably be a 3 seed. They'd be favored to make the Sweet 16 and could absolutely make a Final Four run, even win a national title. It's like everything they're playing for is still ahead of this team, but they've lost 3 straight, and they're now 2 games back in a very competitive Big Ten race with half the season yet to go. They're not out of the running, but they have zero margin of error. They might need to run the table to win it outright, which is not going to happen. So, how does this team respond? It was not a good first response against Indiana.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing for me. That's the scary thing mentality wise is it felt like you still have everything in front of you if you win this game. Like Nebraska was the only team that would have been multiple games up on Purdue had they won this game. And I know Purdue obviously had no idea, like the team had no idea this was going on, but Nebraska was it lost to Michigan that night. Like Purdue could have very well ended Tuesday night one game back in the Big Ten standings with games against every team in front of them left on the schedule. I think besides Illinois, I think Illinois only has one Big Ten loss, and obviously they're not left on the schedule. But this is a Purdue team that would have been a game back of Nebraska, Michigan, and Illinois, and still had Michigan State, Michigan, and Nebraska all on the schedule left. You win those 3 games, and after beating Indiana, like you theoretically should win the league. So it was hard for me. It's hard for me to even say that because this team felt like they had everything in front of them still, and this was kind of their chance to respond and rebound and stay in the heat of the Big Ten race. And now you're kind of on the outside looking in. You have 3 Big Ten losses already, and unfortunately, that's a lot of losses in a league that I think the champion's going to end up 17-3 at the worst.
Yeah, like I said, halfway through the Big Ten calendar, every team, I believe almost every team at least, has played 10 games. And where do they go from here? Like, what do they do? I would have said before the Indiana game that was their chance to say, hey, we had 2 really tough, close losses where our defense let us down. Let's get right. And they weren't able to do that. And they looked disinterested for 25 to 30 minutes of that game. On the road in a rivalry game, coming off 2 losses in Big Ten play, that's pretty damning. And now that said, we talked about this in the IU or the preview, maybe the Illinois recap. The next 2 games Purdue has are against Maryland and Oregon, arguably the 2 worst teams in the Big Ten. Like, those should be even the way Purdue has played. They could play exactly the way they played against Indiana and beat Maryland on the road by 10. So, in theory, they should go on a little mini 2-game win streak before they play at Nebraska. Like, you couldn't ask for a little mini stretch more suited to getting right for this team. Should be 2 easy wins. Win those 2 games. Regain your mojo. Gain a little bit of confidence back. Then go on the road to Nebraska and show them that you're still a top 5 team in the country, which this Purdue, for all the faults that I've listed out for Purdue and how critical I've been of them over the last month or so, even before they started losing, this team still has the personnel to be a top 5 team in the country. And when you're a top 5 team in the country, you can win a national title. I don't think anything this team does over the next month and a half will make me confident going into March Madness that they're a favorite to win the title, especially given the sheer number of elite teams at the top of the sport this year. But this team can absolutely win a title. They're still in that category of, because again, at the end of the day, 17-4, like a lot of teams would kill to be 17-4 right now, even teams that had national title hopes preseason. So for as much as this 3-game losing streak, and particularly the IU game, feels bad, and it puts Purdue at a disadvantage in their own conference, everything they're playing for from a national stage is still in front of them. They just have to go out and act like they want it.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you're most likely going into this Nebraska game at 19-4 with a 9-3 record in the Big Ten. There's still plenty ahead of you. This team's still ninth on KenPom despite a 3-game losing streak. By the way, like they haven't slid that far analytically, as bad as the stretch feels like it's been. I mean,
Still ahead of UConn.
yeah, you said it, not me. But speaking of UConn, like they're a perfect example of why Purdue fans don't need to panic and say, this team can't win a title. The first Dan Hurley team to win a title, the 2023 UConn, had a worse stretch than this, where they lost 3 games in worse fashion to worse teams, and they're losing to like Georgetown, to Ed Cooley in Georgetown. We haven't had that yet, thankfully. Mick Cronin in UCLA is close, but no cigar in my opinion. But I digress. But anyway, regardless, the point is that we've seen teams have a stretch like this and win a national championship. The bad news is that doesn't happen very often. More often than not, the team who won a national championship doesn't lose back to back games at all. But it is possible, and especially in a year with as many elite teams as there are, it wouldn't shock me for any one of them to lose a couple games in a row and still manage to win a championship after at the end of the season. There's a lot in front of this Purdue team, and that being said, I think there were some things found at the end of the game. Oscar Clough, as I mentioned, got benched. This team went primarily to Jack Benner at the 4 and Trey Kaufman ran at the 5. I thought that lineup visibly looked a lot better. They came back on the scoreboard, albeit with some help from Indiana, but I think made things a lot more tougher on Indiana. And if Jack Benner's going to rebound the way that he has been all year, like I think that's a real possibility of a lineup that grows minutes per game wise in the very near future.
I think it might be time to play Jack Benner like 25 minutes.
That's
I
where
mean,
I'm at.
you're
He
you're
needs
still
six
gonna start
man.
Clough and Trick off and run. Like you're not gonna change up the starting lineup, but Benner should come in for Clough instead of Jacobson at the under 16. Play Benner 25 minutes, play Trey 30, play Clough 20, and play Jacobson like 5 to 8. And if Jacobson has it going on, if he's swatting shots and drop, then leave him in there for a little bit longer. If Clough is making a big impact on the boards and getting lots of easy looks around the rim, play him a little bit more. If Benter comes in chucking from 3 and misses his first couple and isn't able to have a big impact on the boards, maybe you don't play him as much that game. But I think Jack Benner, 25 minutes is probably where this team needs to go to maximize what they can do on both ends of the court. Um, Clough and Chaycop and Ren playing together kind of relied on both of them being monster rebounders to really work. And when both of them are rebounding at an average or below average rate, the upsides to that lineup start to diminish rapidly.
Yeah, I mean the rebounding has been a massive issue. It's really started to fall off for Purdue. It's no longer a strength of this team, and that's weird to say, but it like the offensive rebounding has dropped off a cliff. Especially that Purdue used to be an elite offensive rebounding team, like one of the top 10 in the country. They're now 42nd on Ken Palm in offensive rebound rate. I guess it's not even Ken Palm stat. They're just 42nd nationally in offensive rebounding rate. The defensive rebounding rate hasn't taken a huge drop, but I think it's why they feel a little less dominant is because they just dominated you offensively on the glass, and it felt like it carried over a little bit defensively. It just broke people's spirits a little bit on the glass, and they don't have that edge or that toughness anymore. And I think that's part of why you're seeing this Purdue team feel a little bit soft, dare I say. Like it's a little bit like we're going to let you run what you want, and then we'll try and rebound with you, but we're not going to go bully you on the glass. And I think that's kind of the switch that I'm hoping gets flipped back. I think that's tangible that we've seen this team do already at a very high level that I think this team can start doing again very soon and get back to that top 5 level team.
I mean, Purdue always played, even when Purdue's defense was really, really good for like that month stretch in December. Like they still played a really passive defense who was going to let teams get into their stuff and hope they just forced some tougher shots and rebounded the ball. And Purdue defensively was always an above average rebounding team, not a great one. Offensive rebounding was what really set this team apart. And it's what made them be able to survive cold shooting nights because Trey and Oscar were grabbing everything. And if they missed, then Jack Benner was crashing in from the wing and grabbing an offensive board. And it allowed them to survive, a few offensive rebounds the other way because they just would grab more possessions than the other team. And when the offensive rebounding rate plummets, suddenly that above average defensive rebounding rate needs to be a really good defensive rebounding rate to make up for the fact that it's such a passive defense. And the defensive rebounding hasn't moved like that, and that's kind of what you're seeing now with teams playing Purdue a lot more evenly on the boards.
Yeah, it's been a big change, and I think has been what has been most responsible for this 3 game skid is the rebounding. It's been trending down for a little while, and it felt like it finally crashed and hit rock bottom. But ideally, that means there's nowhere left to go but up. This team does respond with a very tough rebounding team, I'd say, in Maryland. That's about the only thing I think that this Maryland team really does all that well. They're not a very good team, but it's a Buzz Williams team, so there's going to be a lot of throw the ball at the rim and send all 5 guys to go get it, and so it'll be a good test for Purdue to respond after the skid. But that's about all I have on this game. Obviously, not every game you want to get on recap, but something you got to do, and it's unfortunate, but we'll move on. And very nice to see a couple of tune-up games in the coming future.
Yeah, I mean, Purdue plays Maryland and Oregon, and then I think the stretch that'll define their season, the regular season, at least, at Nebraska, at Iowa, home versus Michigan, home versus Indiana, home versus Michigan State. Those 5 games will turn. If you go 5-0 on those games, Purdue's right back in the Big Ten race. You go 2-3, and Purdue's probably looking at like a 4 or 5 seed in the Big Ten tournament with an uphill climb to get to a Final Four. So it'll be a big important stretch for Purdue to really show what they can do, and they'll have 2, like you said, tune-up games before that. So be sure to stay tuned to the channel. We'll have previews and recaps of games next month or so. A little extra madness as well. So yeah, thanks for watching, and stay tuned.